Hey everyone, welcome back to the Layback Podcast. Joining us today is first year pitching coach at the University of Toledo, Ethan Landon. Ethan had an incredible first year with his group up with the Rockets. I was proud to see him bring some glory to my hometown of Toledo and really bring the Rockets to new heights. Not only did the Rockets have some amazing team accomplishments as well as staff accomplishments, but they made their first appearance in the MAC championship, probably stole his thunder a little bit on that one. But before we even let him talk about his background, we have to get into probably the possibly ugliest conference tournament game ever played. These are my words, not his. I don't want him getting fined. I don't want anything happening to Toledo here. This is a game that probably never should have been played. Again, my words, not his. Ethan, if you just want to open up to start with your opening round matchup against BGSU and whatever it was, 50 degrees and an absolute downpour. Yeah, what a way to open up tournament play.
Well, it's what you play the whole season for, right? It was one of the more unforgettable experiences I've ever had in my life. You know, as a coaching staff, we've got multiple decades in the game of baseball, and we're all looking at each other in the dugout like, have you ever seen this before? To add a little context, Thursday morning of the conference tournament, we're playing Bowling Green, and obviously our rival, right down I-75. And it was raining about as hard as I've ever seen in a baseball game. There was, in 2 innings, double-digit walks, double-digit wild pitches, balls flying around all over the place. And the funny thing is, you look at it and you're like, okay, so Bowling Green's starter, who's really, really good, our starter, who's really, really good, you have 2 of the premier strike throwers in the MAC on the mound. And I saw a snippet in the screenshot. It was like at one point there was 7 straight walks. And both pitchers are out there, like between pitches, they have their hand in their back pocket trying to keep it dry. We're recycling waterlogged, wet baseballs back in onto the field. It was certainly an experience, thankfully. We only had to put up with that for 2 innings before we had about a 7-hour delay. But it was one of the crazier experiences. I could coach for another 50 years, and hopefully I don't have another experience like that. But, life's about collecting experiences, and that was certainly one of them.
Yeah, I think there's a few ways we could look at this, and we could probably go the statistical route to start. And with Jackson Bergman on the bump for you guys, I think he hit a third of his season total in walks in that 1 inning alone.
Mm-hmm. Well, I took a mound visit, and I don't really even know like what my coaching point was. I was just trying to give him a second to kind of cool down, and we come back into the dugout, and we're like, hey, and this is the best coaching you've ever heard of in your life. I'm looking at Rob, our head coach, and we're like, who can throw a strike? Like, who can throw a strike? And we have a 6th-year senior, Yanni Scariotis, who's one of my favorite guys I've ever coached. And he perks up. He's like, I could try. And so we sent him down to the bullpen, and he came in and he got us out of a jam. And when you look at how that game finished out, it was massive that he came in and he threw strikes and he got us out of that thing, still up 2 runs going into the rain delay. I talked to him about it multiple times. He's kind of chapped because he felt like he should have been on the all-tournament team just for that 2/3 of an inning coming in there. But you look at that inning goes really weird, and everybody knows the game of baseball. Who knows what the outcome of that game is once we resume? So it was certainly something out of a storybook for sure.
Yeah, 9 out of 14 pitches for strikes in that inning might be the single most impressive baseball stat ever recorded.
100%. I told him, I said, listen, you're going to be telling this story the rest of your life. He's going on to med school and he's going to be really successful in everything that he does in life. And I'm like, whatever you do from here on out, nothing is going to be more impressive than you coming in when the rain is blowing 30 miles an hour in your face and you threw 9 out of 14 strikes.
I think stories need to be written about that single performance right there. Nothing else. Like that's the highlight of the college baseball season. That should be the focus. I mean, Yanni should probably have a biography written about him, about those 14 pitches and the adversity he faced within it.
It was wild. And it was a wild start to a wild tournament, right? Then you end up playing 6 games in 3 days after that. And it was all hands on deck, and certainly a successful run through the MAC tournament for us. We came up 1 game short, but you look at how that thing started and we're all sitting there going, as I said, we played the whole season for this, and this is how it's going to start out for us.
It's crazy stuff, but with this, we should probably back it up and at least let you share a little bit of your background. I just had to get into this right away. To me, there was no farting around of letting you actually talk about yourself. We had to address the elephant in the room right away, which was probably the craziest game of college baseball ever started, let alone finished 12 hours later.
Yes. Well, and rightfully so. That game is much more important than anything I could tell you about my background. But no, I pitched at Michigan State. When I got into coaching, I actually got an unbelievable opportunity. My pitching coach from Michigan State, Skylar Mead, got the head coaching job at Troy University. And thankfully, he thought highly enough of me during my playing days that he thought I'd be a great coach and brought me down to Troy with him. And those years were instrumental in me kind of learning not just the other side of the game from a coaching perspective, as opposed to seeing it as a player, but kind of seeing the motor, seeing what it takes to be a really high level coach. And this last season, thankfully, I got an opportunity to come up here to Toledo and kind of take over my own thing, right? Run my own pitching staff, which ultimately was my goal getting into this, and had a lot of success in year one. We were number one in the MAC in ERA and batting average against, and a lot of different statistical categories. And thankfully, we have really good players. Good players make good coaches. But no, it's been a lot of fun so far, and I'm loving my time here in Toledo.
One thing of tremendous significance that we can probably address off the jump with you taking over your own program is you really had some unprecedented success from young players. You guys had the freshman pitcher of the year, as well as what you and I have talked a little bit about offline, quite possibly the runner-up for freshman pitcher of the year on the same staff. So not only did you guys have fifth-year guys perform at a high level in this realm of college baseball where you mostly see fourth year, fifth year, and even sixth-year guys take the bump, you guys had first-year dudes really perform well. So if you could even begin to comment on why or how young guys were able to have success in your program, I think that would be a really cool insight.
Absolutely. And as you touched on, like, it's kind of an old guy's game right now, college baseball. And that really started with like the COVID era with guys getting extra years. And it kind of is unprecedented in college baseball nowadays for freshmen to come in and really hit the ground running right away. You don't see it a whole lot. And I think you see two different profiles of guys, both really, really unique and talented in their own ways. Brady Sass is a kid who has really good stuff. And I think he hasn't even begun to scratch the surface of what he can do as a baseball player, but he probably has better command and throws more strikes than any 18-year-old kid I've ever seen. And it's real compete. He wants the baseball. And again, he does some really unique things when he's on the mound. And then you've got Braden Curry, who's a local kid here. His dad pitched in professional baseball, pitched in the big leagues, got a cup of coffee up there. A super high slot guy that's an incredibly uncomfortable at bat. I would talk to other coaches and other pitching coaches in the league after he threw, and they're like, guys are coming back into the dugout. They're like, I don't see it. It's weird. And for him, again, a guy that came in, he got on campus, he did his first physical. He was 146 pounds. 146 pounds to 9 months later, he was one of the best relievers in the league and had tremendous success as a freshman. It's a testament to how much hard work he put in on his body, on his stuff, understanding who he is. But it is fun to see young guys have success when you turn on the TV and you're watching regionals, when it's a lot of fourth and fifth year guys. Like, it makes you excited about the future of the game, that young guys can still come in and pitch and succeed right away.
Obviously, those guys were in a system that enabled them to be successful. I know they came in with talent. Nobody plays Division I baseball these days without talent, but maybe this is a chance for you to toot your own horn a little bit, or maybe for the staff as a whole to toot their horn for how you were able to get so much out of guys that maybe you didn't expect a ton out of early on, because you have to create an environment for these guys to be successful. And don't worry, I'm going to come back and try to poke some holes later on. First, we'll give you an opportunity to say what went really well before we start to find the problems with anything.
Yeah, I think when you're a coach and you're coming into a situation where it's a lot of new guys. And for me, coming into a new staff last year, it was totally new guys, like even guys that had been here, I had never coached them before. So a lot of it early on was trying to meet guys where they were at. everybody is at a different stage of their development when you get them. You get the Yannis who are 6th-year seniors who are super physical and they know their stuff and they've been in the weight room and they're strike throwers. And it's a little bit more about like tweaking and developing an arsenal that can help them get everybody out. Whereas with the freshmen, it's laying the foundation. For Curry, the weight room was a massive emphasis. You talk about over the course of a 4-month, 56-game season, like he needed to add some weight. He needed to get stronger. His stuff was pretty good, but it was a matter of making sure that he could make it through the course of a season and be really successful the whole time. So for him, when we get all these guys and they come in, it's an evaluation process initially. So we go through all the same evals that I'm sure a lot of people do with the athletic training staff and the strength and conditioning staff. And we throw bullpens on the TrackMan unit so we can kind of get a foundation of, hey, here's what your stuff looks like. Here's the zones that your stuff is going to play in. And then we build out plans and routines for those guys. And those are constantly under construction throughout the course of the fall. That's a very small sample size for us to see, okay, what's working, what's not. Let's make sure that we adjust quickly if something's not working, and let's play to your strengths and continue to get you better. And for Sass, it was the same thing. He was a kid that came in with a little bit more of a training history. I still think that he can continue to get bigger, faster, stronger, more physical. It was a little bit more about like the arsenal with him because he was so advanced. The big thing for me when I get all these guys and these new guys is trying to make sure that they understand that we're not going to cookie cut any singular one of them. Every guy's program needs to look a little bit different for them to maximize who they can be as a pitcher. Like I say it all the time, my 6'7" left-handed pitcher and my 5'10" right-handed pitcher need something different. I have to coach both of those guys in different ways. They have different movement patterns. Their ball flight is different. Where they're going to pitch in the zone is going to be different. We have our pillars as a pitching staff of what we believe in cohesively, but everybody can get to that result a little bit differently. And I think that's where you get the uniqueness of a really good pitching staff.
Now, even in the structure of the pitching staff, I want to spend some time on this because you were not afforded the opportunity to create the pitching staff, right? You weren't able to recruit. You were given whoever was recruited for you, basically. And you lucked into a pretty good situation. You had
Absolutely
very talented dude, so that was a good little draw you had there. Given that you stepped into a situation where your familiarity is really only what you can find on scouting reports or on Synergy or some sort of online system or what somebody has told you about these kids, how much of what a player has done before influenced how you went about your structure in programming this year? Like, for example, a kid like Bergman, who was a starter in the weekend rotation, granted, he dealt with something in the fall, but maybe someone in a similar situation, like Yanni, who threw relief innings historically. Do you go off the jump knowing that that guy's going to be a reliever in your mind, or is it just complete open season because you're walking into a new situation, much as the players are?
I try to go into it with as much of an open mind as possible. Now, when you have a guy like Bergman coming back who had been a weekend starter and it's turbo sync and it's a good breaking ball and there's like tons of strikes, you have a pretty good idea like that guy's going to throw a bulk share of innings for us, right? But you're also trying to take stock of, there's some talented guys on the staff that haven't had success in the past. And a lot of that is trying to figure out, okay, is it like a stuff thing? Is it a mental thing? Like, does he need a fresh start? Like, do we need to start to tweak the delivery and the arsenal? Like, there's any number of reasons that guys haven't had success in the past. And so a lot of that is just like having conversations right away. I'm a massive believer that like, if I can communicate with a pitcher, we can figure it out. The communication aspect and the relationship aspect of building pitching staffs is a massive importance to me. And so it's having conversations with those guys. Like, if I come in day one and I have a system and it's super rigid and it's everybody needs to throw the same way. You throw the same plyos, you throw to the same distance, you throw the same bullpens, you throw the same everything right away. It's going to work for the guys that it should work for. But then you have all these other guys off to the side where you don't know what the maximum of that pitcher looks like. And so, again, to your point, like you do have kind of an idea coming in about, we had Jacob Tabor, who was a freshman All-American as a bullpen guy the year before. Like, we had a pretty good idea that he's a guy that was on track to become a starter. That's kind of the general trajectory in college baseball. If you're a really good relief guy as a freshman, you bump up into the weekend rotation as a sophomore, and then you keep building from there. But there was still some development that needed to happen there for him. And keeping an open mind on a couple guys, like we have a kid named Ethan Landon who is a massive bullpen piece for us this year. And he does some really, really unique things. He's tough on hitters. He didn't have a great sophomore year, and I kept watching video before I got here and met all these guys. I'm like, why isn't this guy having success? And so having tons of conversations with him in the fall and working on some of the mental side with him and kind of tweaking his stuff, he comes out this year and he's a real dude. Players are allowed to get better, right? I say that all the time, and we kind of lose that sometimes in college baseball nowadays, where it's, hey, you got 1 year to show us what you can do, and maybe then it's on to the next guy in the portal. Players are still allowed to get better and develop, and I think that we had a good kind of mixture this year of guys that had had success that continued on having success, and then guys that had the profiles to have success, the stuff to have success, and helping build that confidence in their stuff and their arsenal and all that allowed them to have breakout years this year, and we're super proud of that.
How do you juggle that as a coach, specifically with giving a guy time to get better when obviously your livelihood depends on winning ball games? Your head coach's livelihood depends on winning ball games and doing things the team has not done before. Thankfully, you guys were able to do a good bit of that this year, and it sounds like players were able to get better. So I'm very curious how you guys as a staff are able to juggle development of a player who might not get a lot of time on the field or needs to show significant improvement to crack a rotation, but they're not constantly getting game exposure.
I think initially in the fall, it's putting them in positions to be successful, if that makes sense. Like how we structure some fall formats, we're putting guys out there in opportunities for them to be successful. And it does take patience at times. I preach all the time with these guys, like baseball is a really, really hard game. If you ride the highs and you ride the lows, you're not going to have very much fun playing baseball. So if you go out there in the fall and you have 2 innings and you strike out 3 guys, but you give up 4 runs, the conversation with me, with these guys in their post-outing reports is, let's take the really good stuff that happened and understand, like, let's find a way to continue to replicate that. Let's not dwell on the bad. Let's understand why it happened, and we can make adjustments for that. But like, you can't ride those highs and lows on every single pitch that you throw. It's having the mentality of, I'm going to walk some guys. I'm going to give up some hits. Somebody's going to make an error behind me. I think it's making it okay for guys to fail every once in a while and knowing, like, I'm still going to get another opportunity. This is about my development. It's not about having a 0 ERA in the fall. It's about development.
With fall being so much about development, and fortunately you will have a fall now with a little bit of a background on what your guys can actually do instead of just going in blind, is anything going to change now that you have an idea of what these guys can do? Instead of predicting what they can do, now you've actually seen it for a good chunk of your dudes. I know you still have some recruiting to do, but you're going to be able to build on something now. It's not just like staring at unshaped clay or unchiseled marble and just hoping. Now you've actually made some progress. So what maybe is going to change this fall from the previous?
Well, I think you still have to lay your foundation and your principles immediately with everybody, right? But you're exactly right. Like, a lot of our conversations and exit meetings with the guys that are coming back was about what's going to be expected of them next fall and going into next season, and then conversations about their development. When you get guys back and you have a full season and a full fall worth of sample size with them, you know how they go about their business, you know what they're good at, you know what they're bad at. How do we layer more ability onto what they can do as a pitcher? So if you're a guy that has a really good breaking ball and that's how you get misses and it's down in the zone, like, can we expand that miss zone and throw a fastball up in the zone and continue to add layers to that? Continuing to develop arsenals for the guys that have been here. And then with the new guys, it'll be a lot of, again, meeting guys where they're at, trying to understand where everybody's at in their curve of development will be a massive emphasis. But I am excited to go into a fall and have a lot of guys that are back that I have a track record with. They know my system. They know what's expected of them. And I'll put a lot of onus on them to make sure that the new guys are coming in and they're being brought along correctly. We did things a certain way, and I'm not super rigid in my system in terms of like every guy has to do everything the same way, but I'm hoping that we have a lot of good older guys that have great routines and work really hard and they go about their process the right way. And the new guys come in and they see how the older guys work. That's how you get really, really good players. They understand what's expected of them, and the expectations are that you get a little bit better every single day.
Given the importance that's put on the buzzword now or buzz phrase of a throwing on ramp, I'd love to hear more about your system. What does it look like for somebody to step in to the Toledo Rockets pitching staff and grow through the Ethan Landon system or the Rockets system?
Yeah, I just actually had some conversations last night with freshmen that are coming in. Unfortunately, last fall, I had not recruited any of those guys. So, like, I didn't have a background with them coming in. And I got the job in July. And at that point, like, you're trying to hit the ground running and get your feet wet, whatever. But I was having some conversations with freshmen that are coming in next fall about, hey, where are you at with your high school season right now? Are you playing summer ball? If so, you're going to be good to go. You're going to hit the ground running when you're geared. If you're taking a little bit of time off after your high school season because you've hit a certain innings limit or whatever, like, let's make sure that we're mapping out. So when you guys get here in August, you're going to be ready to go. So from an on-ramp perspective, obviously it matters like where guys are at in their throwing progression. If you're coming off of a season where you threw 60, 70 innings and then you went out and played summer ball, the fall for me is a little bit more about let's work on some of the things that we didn't maybe do incredibly well last year so we can continue to develop your arsenal. But like the focus on like facing hitters all the time maybe won't be quite as important as the new guys coming in and they've got to get ramped into the system. We have to see what they can do against hitters, but it's different for everybody.
Is there a specific throwing program that you have any of your guys doing? Are you messing around with throw counts or how are you managing workload?
I wouldn't say like a specific throwing program per se. Like I have guys that love to long toss and they do it multiple times a week. I'm cool with that. I have guys that love to throw to 90 feet at max intent because that's where they feel like they're at. I'm cool with that. Like it's all about making sure that you understand what makes you good. Now, for those freshmen that are coming in, so you're talking about like the throwing plan that I'm giving them. The throwing plan that I'm giving them is basically that they're going to be throwing in some capacity 5 times a week. Now I've scheduled in high days, low days, medium days, recovery days, and they're getting off the mound about twice a week as they get up to being here on campus, with one of them being a heavier day and the other day being a touch and feel day. As we go throughout the fall, like we'll touch the mound the first week we're back here on campus, last week of August-ish, and then that progresses as the fall goes on. I always take it from a perspective of let's make sure that we're feeling good early. Like we don't play the MAC tournament the last week of August. So like let's schedule in maybe a couple more of those recovery days for guys that are working back into an on-ramp of a throwing program. And then as we get closer to the starting of like our inter squad scrimmages, let's get off the mound a couple times a week. Let's make sure that there's at least one of those days that's really high intensity. You know, if you're talking about an intensity scale of 1 to 10, if you have 8 out of 10 days a week, 9 out of 10 days a week, those are your competition days. Those are your max intent bullpens. Those are days you're facing live hitters. You need to have 2 days that are probably 1s or 2s. Like we need to take the recovery aspect of this thing really seriously. Usually those are days immediately after throwing. So that's 4 of your 7 days. And then the other 3 days are, again, kind of based on what that guy likes to do. Is it, I'm going to go long toss and pull down at the end of it. Okay, that's another like fairly high intent throwing day. So let's make sure that we litter in like a low intensity or a medium day after that. But again, it's kind of based on what's best for each guy.
Maybe my last pressing question on this topic before we shift a little bit is going back to your ability to support individuality amongst your staff. It sounds like that's really important to you to allow guys to be themselves, not just on the bump, but in their programming to ensure that what they're doing, they have comfort with and that they're confident in. So how, when everybody needs to throw with a partner, are you able to support?
Yeah,
Say
we
that again.
bucket guys. We'll like bucket guys
Okay.
into different categories. Yeah. I probably should have said that a little bit earlier, but we'll bucket guys into different categories. So when they do their evals with the strength and conditioning staff and the athletic training staff, I kind of bucket them based on how they move. Like super loose guys, they're going to be doing not the same thing, but along the same lines of what they do in their warm-up routine and their post-throw routine, and their throwing programs are going to look relatively similar. You get your super stiff guys. Those guys kind of move the same way. Those are generally guys that we need to open up range of motion. They're probably more along the lines of, hey, get out there to a little bit further distance, open everything up. So they understand like the buckets that they are in. It's not just complete total chaos of every single guy is, completely off the wall doing their own thing. But we bucket guys generally into categories of how they move and what their arsenal looks like, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Like I said, I wasn't just going to hype you up the whole podcast. I had to
No,
find
you got to
places
hit
where
the
I could
hard-hitting
press a little bit.
questions. No, you got to hit the hard-hitting questions for sure. I love talking about this stuff, so I could talk about it all day.
Perfect. Well, we're probably going to make not the smoothest transition, but we are going to jump ahead from the fall all the way back into our current place in baseball, which is tournament play, the postseason. You let on that you guys had quite the interesting path through the conference tournament. We talked about the opening game a good bit already, but then, as you mentioned, you played 6 games in 3 days all the way into the conference championship. So I definitely want to talk a good bit about pen management, but of course, to get to the postseason, you have to manage things effectively to even have a shot. So we're going to back things up in potentially a tougher question here. How can you, as a coach, set your staff up for success when you don't necessarily know what role they're going to be throwing in? Obviously, in a tournament or in the postseason, we're seeing starters come out of the pen. We're seeing relievers get extended. We're seeing guys who throw 1 inning normally are all of a sudden throwing 1 inning in 3 consecutive games on 3 consecutive days. So it's not stuff that is normally in the regular season schedule. But of course, the reason we play the regular season is to ultimately compete for a championship. So please shed any light you can on this extremely difficult and timely topic.
I'm not going to lie to you. It is challenging. I think you have to be really intentional about investing in guys throughout the year. I'll just be straightforward with you. Like from a MAC perspective, there's never been multiple teams that have ever made the NCAA tournament from the MAC. It would be really challenging as an SEC team that's playing for RPI every single weekend and you're trying to host and you're like, hey, I've got my 4 horses. We have to win all of these games. We're obviously trying to win every single game we play, but we can take a little bit more of a long-term approach in a midweek game. And it's like, this guy's going to have to get big outs for us at some point this year if we're going to do the things we want to do in the conference tournament. We were having conversations like that in March, honestly. Hey, this is a guy we absolutely have to get into this baseball game today. We have to invest innings into this guy. And I think when you go back and look at our stats throughout the year, we had basically 10 guys that threw over 30 innings this year. So it helps you. And you see when you're able to play 6 games in a conference tournament, there are a lot of teams that did not have the pitching depth to do that. It helps you when you go play Kent State in the second game of a day in a conference tournament, and both the guys that we rolled out there had pitched a lot throughout the year. That was game 5 of the tournament for us. But those seeds were laid early in the season when it was talked about, we're going to need this guy to get outs for us if we're going to do the things that we want to do. So like, we're going to put him out there in the fire and see if he's capable of doing it. And ultimately growth happens through succeeding and failing, right? I can't tell you how many conversations I had with guys this year where you see it at the end of the season when everything comes to its culmination. But during the season, it's hard to see sometimes when you don't have a great outing. It's like, hey, this is building towards something. I promise. Understand what's going on. Trust the process. Continue to be confident in your stuff. We're going to continue to build. You're a 1 inning guy right now. Next time you go out there, we're going to see if you can get through that 2nd inning and continue to build and build and build. But it's that investment into guys throughout the course of the season when Maybe it would be really easy to just say, hey, Logan Jones is the best bullpen guy in the league. We have a 8-3 lead right now. Let's just roll him out there because we know the game's over if he goes in. No, like we need to get some other guys in there and figure out what they have. But it is challenging. There is no doubt. You have to be committed to there's a long-term process here.
Maybe the second layer to that, since you already talked about kind of scheduling guys to an extent or forcing dudes to throw in uncomfortable situations, but that's with like the proper on ramps. You're at least able to tell a guy like, hey, you're going today. So you're able to give them some fair warning. Now, the other piece of the conference tournament or postseason play is guys throwing in abnormal roles. Like you're seeing a Friday guy who's then coming in to throw in relief in a clinching game on a Monday or something like that. Or as we said, a reliever that's going back to back, which normally might have only thrown on a Friday and a Sunday. Are those also things that you're taking into consideration or trying to prep for? Or are those just game time decisions?
I think it's a little bit of both. You're having conversations with guys all the time. I walk into the bullpen every single day and the guys will chuckle because I walk up to every single guy. I'm like, how do you feel? How do you feel today? You feel good? Are you hanging? Is your lat sore? Is your scap sore? Whatever. We're very, very blessed. We have an unbelievable athletic trainer here, Devin Cassidy. He was actually a college baseball player himself, which I think is incredibly valuable in the game that we play. He understands the rigors of the season, the rigors of the position, how your body feels when you just got back on a red-eye flight from Seattle early in the season and we got to turn around on a bus trip 2 days later. He does an unbelievable job of making sure that these guys are recovered and they're doing the right things all the time. But there are times where it's game time decisions. For example, in the conference tournament, like we're playing against Miami of Ohio, and, you know, I guess this will sound however it sounds. Yanni Scariotis was a 6-year senior, and he's like, I will throw 190 pitches today. I'm going to be playing golf next week. Like, I don't ever need my arm again. That's a guy that's willing to lay it all out on the line. Whereas, like, Jacob Tabor is our Friday guy. He's a sophomore. He's going to the Cape this summer. He's a real dude. He's going to be a guy for us going forward. He walks up to me before the game on Sunday after throwing 100 pitches on either Thursday or Friday. He's like, hey, I could maybe give you an inning today. And I'm like, absolutely not. That's why we developed depth throughout the course of the season. I will not do that to you, man. And so it's having those conversations with guys. It's understanding who bounces back, who recovers really quickly, who doesn't recover really quickly. Let's make sure that we're using that guy early in the tournament or early in the weekend so that if we want to, we would be able to bring that guy back later in the weekend. And then I'll pump you guys for a second here. Like we started using FlexPro this year and the recovery times that we saw for guys were unbelievable. Like guys were bouncing back really, really quick. They kept their strength up throughout the course of the season. Like we were able to utilize all of our bullpen guys in bounce back roles at times. And I think a large part of that is due to the fact that they were training correctly. So it's a little feather in your guys' cap for sure.
Well, I appreciate that part tremendously. I don't want to talk about us too much.
So yeah, I had to give you the pump.
Yeah, no. I appreciate it. Trust me, that's staying in there. It's not like we're cutting it. But no, what I wanted to go back to is a piece that probably doesn't get addressed enough. And as you said, this is going to sound however it sounds. To many people, it is an elephant in the room that a lot of these guys aren't going to play baseball a week from whenever that last game is. That it's literally the last game they will ever play.
It's the last time they'll ever play baseball.
And there are so many guys, even throughout their senior year, let alone if it's the conference tournament or not, are realistic enough to understand I'm an 89 mile per hour righty with average stuff, but I'm a good college baseball player. I will do whatever I can to support this program. And truthfully, through those conversations and a lot of honesty and a lot of trust, those are generally guys that want to take more risks. It's not only that you can take more risks with those guys. I would be hard pressed to find a college baseball player that doesn't want to be out there every single second he can. Given the trust and the rapport that you're able to build throughout a season, for instance, with a guy like Yanni, who's been a part of it forever, who's going to go on to med school, that's a dude that if you asked him to throw every single game of the entire season,
He would do it.
probably would have.
Yes. Well, and that's where I think context matters. So you talk about like over the course of the season, that's where it's still my job to be intelligent and make sure that guys are doing the right things with that long-term approach. When you get to the conference tournament and it's all hands on deck, obviously you go towards those in-game decisions of like, hey, how do we win baseball games? But like there were times throughout the year where I had pitchers who were going to be done after this year. This is their last year of baseball. And they're like, hey, I'm ready to bounce back today. I'm like, no, you're not. You're not ready to bounce back yet today. We still have to be intelligent. We have 2 months left in the season. We're not just throwing all caution to the wind. We do have a lot of other really capable pitchers that are good that we're continuing to develop and invest in. And again, like I think the proof's in the pudding. You see why we can go through a conference tournament and have enough pitching to play 6 games. I don't think many teams in our league, I don't think many teams nationally have enough pitching to go through 6 games in 3.5 days in a conference tournament. And so it's a testament to what we did throughout the year. But yeah, I think you have context throughout the course of the season. You manage it correctly and intelligently with the big picture in mind. And then once you get to the conference tournament, if there's a guy that says, I'll throw 275 pitches today or whatever it may be, you go win a baseball game.
You cannot exclude the human element from all of this and what these guys want to do for the legends that they want to write about themselves. And it's so funky to talk about. Of course, we're coming at this as an arm care company. Like we want to preach the right decision, the smart decision, the data-driven decision. But at some point, we have to acknowledge that we are playing a game and there is an end to this game for all of us. And the fact that for some of these guys, it can be in a championship situation is pretty freaking cool. So you might
They'll
as well
remember that the rest of their lives, right? They'll remember it for the rest of their lives. And we actually talked about it before the conference tournament where like Toledo's been playing baseball for 100 years. They've never won the conference tournament. Like we have an opportunity to go do something that you guys will remember for the rest of your lives. But every time you guys come back to Toledo after this, you'll be the group that did it. And I think guys were pretty inspired by that, especially that group of seniors that wanted to leave their legacy going out the door as, hey, we're the group that finally did it for Toledo. Now we feel great about the foundation we have going forward, and those guys helped lay those bricks that we hope are building towards winning a conference championship and getting to play in an NCAA regional. But again, like I said, you act intelligently. We would never put a guy in a situation where we thought, hey, this guy is going to absolutely blow out on this pitch. We would absolutely never do that. But you have a senior out there that's in his last ever college outing and he wants to try to win a championship. You go try to win the game.
Stepping things back to the regular season, how are you managing workloads then for guys that maybe aren't in that upper group of the rotation? I know you said you're scheduling outings for guys, you're ensuring that dudes get in the game, even if they aren't necessarily the bona fide back end dude that you need to shut the door, because you can kind of play around with your results a little bit, knowing that winning the conference tournament is ultimately all that matters at the end of the day for a postseason bid. But there are only so many games and you have a roster of 18 pitchers. So there's got to be creative ways that you build work capacity for these guys, even in season. Does that involve extending out bullpens or going live on off days? How do you do that?
Yeah, we have guys on the mound a lot during the course of the season. Now, a lot doesn't necessarily mean they're throwing 50 pitches every time. It might be, hey, multiple times this week, you're going to get up there and you're going to throw your set and it's going to be 10, 12 pitches. We're going to throw the hitting dummy in there. We're going to simulate a couple hitters just to give you the feel. And then exactly what you talked about, like if we have a practice day and we only have one midweek that week, and we know, hey, through this midweek, we're only going to have 3 or 4 guys that go into this game. We still need to get the other 3 or 4 guys work. We'll throw an inning. We'll have like a 2 or 3 inning scrimmage that day. And we'll get those guys all an inning of work so that they're sharp going into the weekend if their name gets called. But it's being on the mound. It's being intentional about being on the mound. And it's making sure that those guys are staying in the right mindset. Again, I talk a lot about, and I think every coach talks a lot about confidence and mindset, but just making sure guys know like, hey, we haven't forgotten about you. we're still invested in you. We are going to do everything we can to make sure that you're staying sharp and you're doing the things that you need to do to make sure that when we're out there at the end of the season, you're a big part of it. But it's being intentional about getting guys work for sure.
Now, going into specifics of your roster makeup, did you have any guys during the season really elevate roles that maybe going into the year you didn't expect them to play a massive part? Whether they just showed out when they got their opportunity or through consistent work in those live settings or those extended pens, where they gained additional trust from you or the rest of the staff?
Yeah, I think those two freshmen are a great example of that. Through fall ball, you see both of those guys have success, and you're like, there's something there with both of these guys, but you don't really know until the lights turn on. And we opened up at Oregon this year, who was a regional host. It was one of the best college offenses I've seen in a long time. I mean, they could run, they had juice, they could hit, they could do everything. And you're like, it's going to be really interesting to see when these freshmen get out there against a bunch of third, fourth year guys that have played a lot of college baseball and are going to play professional baseball for the first time. And both of those guys were really good that weekend. And we kind of looked at each other as a coaching staff. We're like, these guys are going to play a massive role in this thing. Curry comes in to a game on Sunday, and the first hitter he ever faced was Jacob Walsh, who's the all-time career home run leader at Oregon. And we're like, hey, welcome to college baseball, man. You get to face a guy that has 65 career home runs. I hope it goes well. But I think you saw both of those guys elevate throughout the course of the season. There's a couple other guys I mentioned. Nate Leininger was a guy that hadn't had a ton of career success coming into this year. He was one of our first guys out of the bullpen on that opening weekend and had a ton of success. And I think that confidence led him into being a guy that had a massive role for us. We used him to close games. We used him in middle relief. We started him in a midweek game. He kind of was like our jack of all trades from a role perspective. Those are really three guys that I think elevated throughout the course of the year. We all knew that they had talent. We all knew that they had stuff. It was just about doing it when the lights turned on.
Now, sticking to the theme that I mentioned earlier of I was going to pump your tires and then deflate you at some point during the process. This is the potential retrospection point where I do try to poke and prod a little bit. So what are a couple things that you think you maybe could have done better or that you're hoping to improve upon going forward?
I think obviously having a season where these guys coming back will have more of a foundation laid with those guys. Like, there's a couple guys where we tried to develop some arsenal stuff and it just didn't work. The numbers said that it should have worked, and the ball flight and the TrackMan, all the data said it should have worked, and it just didn't really work. And that's where you have the ability to pivot. I think sometimes people get in their feelings or they have an ego about it and they're like, no, this is going to work. It's my way or the highway. I had multiple conversations with guys this year where what they were doing we thought was going to work and it didn't. And so we'll have a little bit more sample size going forward. I think from a perspective of fall ball, maybe making sure that guys are getting out there a little bit more consistently for the new guys. Like this last year, we were very conservative with some of our guys, maybe getting them out there a little bit more so they can get their feet put out to the fire and have some of those successes and failures a little bit earlier on. That could be something going forward, but I do feel really good about our process. Like, we're certainly not perfect in that regard and we're always evolving, but I think our process and the proof's kind of been in the pudding, and we'll continue to adapt as we need to, but we're going to do a lot of the same stuff this year, I would say.
Part of the reason I even wanted to ask is going back to what you said earlier about players are allowed to get better. So much of the environment that we are in now in college baseball, it really has been a what have you done for me lately type of league. Everybody is so results driven that oftentimes players feel a pressure that they need to be performing in the moment. Now, not only do players have the right to get better, but coaches have a right to grow as well. And really, 100%. I think that side-by-side action process can be really powerful. I guess maybe let's talk about that communication point a little bit. As you hit on it earlier, you said the communication piece is so big for you. So have there been specific times where you've had to go to a guy and be like, yo, hand up on me, I messed that up. I'll fix that.
I mean, there's multiple times we had to do that. Like, I think about it even in games sometime with like calling pitches. Like we game plan, we do all this stuff. And sometimes the guy gives up a hit and I'm like, why did we do that? Why did we throw that pitch? And you go to the pitchers, and I think guys appreciate honesty. Like there was a time with Bergman this year, I walked up, I'm like, hey, I think I just screwed you there. Like we should have gone to this. This would have gotten that guy out. And he was like, no, I appreciate it. We had a kid named Logan Jones who was a bullpen guy this year. Really, really, really good spin. Like can spin multiple shapes at different speeds. It's really good. Towards the end of the season, there was teams that started to game plan for that a little bit, and he started giving up some hits. And I remember he came to my hotel room one night after an outing, and I just said, hey, man, and this is on me. Like your breaking ball, your slider, your cutter has been so good this year that we haven't really had to go to anything else, and it finally nipped us. So, like, now it's time for us to throw a counter punch, and that's part of my job is to help make sure that we're doing those things. I think that players really appreciate that. Obviously, it doesn't feel good when you fail at times, but it kind of humanizes the coaching aspect of it. None of us are perfect. I'm trying to continue to advance my game at all times. I have a network of coaches and mentors and people that I talk to constantly about, hey, how do you go about this? What would you do in this situation? How would you handle this player? We're always constantly trying to grow and evolve just as players are. And I tell our pitchers all the time, like when we're talking about outings, like, you are going to walk some people. I don't want you to, but you are. You are going to give up some hits. I don't want you to, but that's going to happen. And giving guys freedom to fail at times, I think it lifts a little bit of that weight off their shoulders that like, hey, coach, if I give up a hit, he's not going to be throwing his clipboard in the dugout really mad at me, right? Like it's about being able to adapt and pivot really quickly and keep big numbers off the board at that point. How do we change our mindset in the moment?
I think why I even paused coming out of this was thinking how I wanted to ask this next question. You talked about that Logan Jones example and having to pivot. So maybe from there, since I'm not coaching, I'm not in it. When I was coaching, we didn't have advanced data or synergy where we could really like dive deep on anything. It was just going off of a stat sheet. I gotta love low budget D2 baseball, but when now that you have a little more at your disposal, how much internal scouting are you doing,
All the
or like
time.
game planning in that sense?
All the time. And it's that question of like, do I pitch to my pitcher's strength or do I pitch to the hitter's weakness? Now, ideally, your pitcher's strength lines up with the hitter's weakness, and then it's great. But ultimately, I never want a pitcher on the mound looking at the pitch watch going, I'm not comfortable throwing this pitch, even though it may be the right pitch to that hitter. I always feel like pitcher strength is greater than hitter weakness. And so we call most of what we do to pitcher strengths. Now that we do tons of scouting, and we know each hitter inside and out, but ultimately the convicted pitch that you have confidence in may be better than the pitch that's this guy doesn't hit, but it's not your best pitch. If we go up against a guy that hits 360 against breaking balls and doesn't really swing and miss at them, does that mean that I'm not going to throw that guy breaking balls because that's like what our guy's best pitch is? No, like we're still going to try to win with our best pitch. When we do have to pivot, when you talked about having some of that data, then it's having the conversations about what is the pivot. If guys are leaning out over the plate and they're starting to sit on spin, are you comfortable going in with fastballs to back them off the plate so they have to respect the other half? Are you comfortable throwing right on right changeup, something that goes the other direction? Like there's all these different pivots that we can do within the arsenal, but it's having those conversations about, I'm not the one throwing the pitch, you are. So like, what are you going to be convicted in? What do you believe in so that you're throwing that pitch with the maximum conviction you possibly can?
I think that was well stated. And again, I appreciate the candor. So once again, I'm going to pivot as we kind of near our end on time here today because of my personal poor scheduling, but we're going to fight through it like we fought through plenty.
Mine was not great on my end either. So I appreciate you working with me, man.
Hey, as you said to your guys at the conference tournament, if we can fight through this game, this opening game, we can get through just about anything.
We can
Nothing
get
will
through
be that
anything.
hard. With what people haven't seen in this podcast recording, this is probably a similar situation at this point. If we can get through this, you and I can do just about anything if it comes
All we
to
need
Zoom
is
calls.
the rain to start pouring down in both of our offices right now. It'll be the exact same thing.
Yes. Well, given that you have so much at your disposal. You're now in the portal just like every other school and coach this summer, just given the nature of college baseball. I would love not necessarily a prediction, but what you are hoping for with the Toledo baseball roster going forward. What you think you can build upon, what you guys are doing really well right now, and maybe again, really hitting that introspection. Where do you think you guys can improve as a whole?
Yeah, I think when you look at a roster building perspective, we're always going to have to develop high school guys. And with the portal being the way that it is and everybody else getting older in college baseball, maybe we have access to better high school players than we've ever had access to before. It's maybe a different way to frame it and look at it. We have to build our foundation in that way. Now, does that mean we don't plug holes in the portal where we see fit from a roster perspective? Like everybody has to embrace the portal. But for me, the thing that I guess I love about college baseball is you still have the ability to like coach and make an impact on these guys. I'm a younger coach, so I hope I don't lose this as I get older, but I still remember vividly what it was like being a player. All I wanted to do is get better at baseball. It's all I cared about. And so there are times when you get frustrated as a coach. You have to remember, A, it's a hard game, and B, none of these guys want to fail. And so it's about how do I build a relationship with this guy to make him feel comfortable with me to where we can all get better. I can get better at my job. He can become a better pitcher. So I think the relationship building side of it is huge. We want to continue to be really good at that as we develop high school players and piece together our roster in the portal. But we talk about the roster stuff daily. And if you're not as a coaching staff in college baseball right now, you're falling behind the curve. And in an ever-changing world, you and I played not that long ago. It looks completely different than it's ever looked in college baseball. I think there's more opportunities out there than there ever has been before. We've got a pitcher on our staff, kid named Ryan Kennedy, who went to Virginia Tech out of high school. Really big name coming out, and it just didn't work out. But there's a place for him where he can come throw 50 innings and develop and get better and get out on the field and hopefully be able to live out his dream of playing professional baseball. And I think that's where if kids are intelligent about the decisions they're making and making them for the right reasons, you're going to get yourself to a place where you can compete and play and have success.
You even stole a bit of my next question because I was going to ask about the development or changes in the game that you've even seen the short time it's been since exiting as a player and re-entering as a coach. Yeah, I would say there's certain things that I would even echo from my last game of college baseball in 2017 of seeing one, how much more widespread the talent is. I feel like just overall the bar has risen. The baseline floor is so much higher than it ever was, whether it's velo, whether it's swing decisions on the offensive side, whether it's raw stuff. You just seen more talent in more places than I ever did. At least that's the way that I look at it. But
Absolutely.
What's good is still good. I mean, even beyond that, and I'll ask you to respond to this because it's not just about my opinions. Really, I don't really care about my own opinions. That's why I have people on the podcast to talk about it. I feel like players are also, for the most part, smarter than they ever have been before, or at least have been exposed to more than they ever have. Even in my day, I felt like guys just knew whatever their town ball coach told them or whatever their dad or high school coach told them. Now with the access to information, players can at least talk the talk. Even if they don't walk the walk, they can talk the talk like they never have before.
It makes you know your stuff as a coach. And that's why we have to constantly continue to challenge ourselves to evolve and to learn. There is more access to information than there's ever been before. And I think that's a really good thing. Now, there are times where like a guy wants to go down a rabbit hole and it's like, hey, Spencer Strider does that because he's Spencer Strider. That might not be for you. And so you have to reel guys back in from time to time. But I think it's a really good thing that guys have some ownership over their own careers and some buy-in to what they're doing. And We talked about like developing routines in the fall. Like I let guys have a say in some of the stuff that they do because that's going to create buy-in from them. If they're like, hey, coach just gave me this sheet and I have to do all this stuff and I don't know why I'm doing any of it, you're not going to get the buy-in from them. But if you have those conversations, if you understand the data or the viewpoint that they're coming from in terms of why they want to do this, that, or the other, as long as it's not going to make them worse as a player, I think getting some buy-in from them and letting them do a thing or two that they feel like makes them better can be a great thing. You've got the Cressy Sports Performances of the world and the Tread Athletics who provide incredible resources online on Instagram and Twitter for these guys to go take a look at. Like, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing for players going forward. I think it's a good thing that they have access. And then they come with great questions a lot of times, like, hey, why does this guy do this? Or, hey, why does this guy do that? And we can kind of go through the process of what makes this guy good. This is why he does this. I don't know. I'm a nerd about this kind of stuff, so I always enjoy having those kind of questions with guys. But I think overall it's a very good thing.
And then the final question that I'm going to leave you with probably doesn't matter to anybody else listening aside from maybe Daryl or a couple of your players at UT. What has been your favorite local spot to eat in Toledo in the now 11 months you've lived there?
Stubborn Brothers Pizza, no doubt. It's funny. We do like in the bullpen every day. I'll throw out a question and like it'll be like, hey, if you were on a deserted island, you got 3 foods for the rest of your life, like what would it be? A, it's an icebreaker. B, it gets guys talking and kind of talking crap to each other, which is fun. It gets it lively in the bullpen. But I'm a pizza guy. When we talk about that, like I am a pizza guy through and through. So Stubborn Bros Pizza, I think Dave Portnoy rated it like an 8.1. That was a big sticking point when I came to town. Everybody's like, hey, the pizza guy said this is the best pizza. And it's really good. You're a Toledo guy, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I love Stubborn Bros Pizza.
Heck yeah, I'll take it. And it's kind of funny because Stubborn Brothers opened while I was in college, I think in my later years. So I've actually only been there once in my entire life because of when it opened and then just where I was in my own living situations. So I definitely have to give it another whirl. I loved the one experience I had there. So it will be on my list the next time I'm back up.
I'll tell you what we'll get. So I went there with our athletic trainer not that long ago, and he goes all the time, I guess. He ordered a pepperoni and sliced potato pizza. It's basically like throwing potato chips on top of a pizza. I kind of looked at him with a weird look on my face when he did it, and then I was like, wait, there's no way that can be bad. And when it showed up, man, it was a 10 out of 10. So when you're in town again, we'll go grab a slice of sliced potato pizza.
Hey, sounds great to me. I'm looking forward to it because I'm always looking for somewhere new. And the problem is spending so much time in my life in Toledo, I really felt like I'd hit just about every place I possibly could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a good one, man. We'll have to hit it.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, thanks a ton for the time today, Ethan. This was awesome. I apologize if I forced you to keep anything close to the chest because of the shortened time of our chat
Nope.
today. But it was a pleasure getting to throw some stuff at you and see what you could handle.
Absolutely. No, I enjoy talking about this stuff, man. And when you asked me to do this, I was so excited because you guys have been a great resource for us. And just getting to talk to you and Daryl the last couple months, you guys are a massive part of what we've been able to do. And always happy to talk about college baseball, man.
Awesome. Well, once again, congrats on an awesome season with the Rockets. And looking forward to, as you said, putting the bricks together and building something really cool over at Scott Park.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And to all the listeners out there, thanks for laying back with us.